Thank you. So, morning, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us on this virtual event. Very happy to have you here and give us a chance to share with you a lot of information about Dell Technologies infrastructure solutions. So, I'd like to introduce myself again. My name is Justin Salvador. I'm also from Dell. I'm handling the data center and compute solutions. So I'm part of that organizations within Dell Technologies. So today I'm going to give you a preview of our PowerEdge MX series. What essentially is MX all about? Okay, which is basically our first modular platform for today's software-defined era. No? So designed with Dell EMC's Kinetic infrastructure, PowerEdge MX helps organizations flexibly configure and optimize IT infrastructure, primarily for traditional and especially for new and emerging workloads. So on and discuss some of those new and emerging workloads in today's digital environment. No? So without further ado, so I'd like to start my presentation. Uh, so Onin had a few things to say as well with digital transformation. And as we say that it's the new mandatory. So digital transformation essentially helps emphasize evolving in the digital economy today. No? So a lot of examples today for new companies that have emerged. They all brought their own intelligent technology, or they all brought out this digital technology of their own. No? Organizations, for example, that uses smart devices, no? Sensors, data-driven insights, no? That essentially help them outpace competitors. No? Digital transformation mainly focus on embracing change and making organizations, and most especially those companies that have been in the market for so long already, to be a disruptor and not become the disrupted. So a lot of examples nowadays that are good examples for digital company. No? So we'd say in e-commerce, no, as what Onin mentioned, the online shops like Lazada and Shopee that gave businesses an opportunity to expand their market base by using certain sets of applications to reach out to their customers and basically sell their products and solutions, no, to a lot more larger buyer base, right? So we see organizations thrive in that, most especially in today's uh, environment, no? Given our current situation and scenario right now, where businesses leverage on online platforms, no, to make use, sell, and provide their products and services to their markets. They leverage online platforms like, yeah, the likes of Lazada, Shopee, and so on. No? We see businesses as well leveraged on those online platforms. Even those small businesses, no? Kahit yung mga, if you're familiar with the Jolly Jeeps of Makati, they were able to expand as well their buyer base by using the likes of Grab Food and Food Panda and the likes. No, so what made them uh, have more opportunities is essentially those digital platforms or those much more intelligent technologies, and companies have seen competitors enter their marketplace. The leaders of those respective uh, businesses have seen a large increase of their profitability, no, to thrive and have uh, uh, much more revenue in terms of their business, no, that further increase their profitability, and that's according to a study we did with MIT and Deloitte, no. So a large portion of this digital transformation is coming from an IT transformation standpoint as well. Right? In order for businesses to actually enable themselves with this intelligent applications, intelligent technologies, a lot of businesses agreed that they should also be able to transform yung IT infrastructure nila. So IT transformation mainly centers on modernizing the underlying technology infrastructure that help business become more transformed, by growing beyond the legacy technologies, manual and hard to maintain infrastructure that they had. IT transformation helped them enable the speed, efficiencies, scalability, and cost effectiveness. Okay, with the infrastructure to allow for more IT innovations. In this study, we also see that IT transformation resonates with companies even more now, okay, than it did years ago. No? So it's clear that senior executives view that transformation is a very strategic initiative, for their business. Okay. So when the research firm ESG asked business leaders to agree or disagree with the statement that if IT transformation will help them embrace uh, to become a competitive company, the majority of them agreed. So one of the key pillars of becoming a digitally transformed organization is mainly the infrastructure architecture. No? When virtualization first started to appear in data centers, one of the biggest value propositions of virtualization was to increase server virtualization. It was essentially to increase the utilizations and help IT maximize their infrastructure to deploy more services and more solutions. No, hypervisors increased server utilizations definitely, no, by allowing multiple applications to share same physical resources of hardware. Okay. Well, after virtualization was introduced to the data center, utilizations could even climb up to 50% of hardware resources. So while the improvement of utilization brought by virtualization is impressive, the amount of unutilized or underutilized resources trapped on each server starts to add up quickly as well. Okay. If you have 10 servers and each of those servers have at least 10% unutilized resources, that can still sum up to actually 100% or a single unutilized server in the data center. So in a virtual server farm, the data centers could have the equivalent of one idle server for every 1 to 3 servers deployed. Okay. So while emerging technologies such as AI, Internet of Things, no, software-defined storage, software-defined networking offer competitive benefits for IT to utilize their hardware. Their workloads can also be difficult to predict, and it poses new challenges for IT departments. No, traditional architectures are basically not designed, for modern businesses and service delivery goals, in today's environment. So as we continue to modernize the underlying infrastructure using the likes of software-defined storage, software-defined networking, okay, the workloads running on top of that, like our mission-critical applications, are also tough to predict. So transformational workloads are also driving demand for new technologies. So we are also enabling our infrastructure with the best of breed processors for massive computing, given that today is a compute intensive environment, taking into account AI, IoT, analytics. Okay, it poses a lot of challenges for servers and subcomponents of infrastructures like GPUs and faster storages like NVMe's. So a transformation vision should be based on a realistic assessment of legacy IT systems. So traditional IT environments and enterprise applications were typically assigned to physical servers back in the day, and one-to-one mapping to prevent unexpected interactions between programs. So figure one shows a basically a diagram that shows that a lot of servers before were over provisioned because of the fear of having uh, undersized resources for business requirements. Okay, having those underutilized servers also uh, place them in the mindset of being better safe than sorry. No? Better to be safe and have a lot of resources than to be sorry of having insufficient resources to support business applications. Okay? This mindset is not necessary and a bad philosophy for today's uh, application centric or data centric environment. Okay, this is something that we call stranded capacity. These are the things that organizations paid for but did not really use, so, in the production environment. Okay, it was a result of over provisioning. So then comes figure two that virtualization era provided, which essentially given organizations uh, better server utilizations of having more than 50%. But then again, in this type of environment is basically not enough for IT departments to support businesses and to drive innovations to become a digital company. No? Okay. Uh, Now we are introducing a disaggregation era. So in a fully disaggregated server model, resources typically found in servers are grouped together into common resource pools. So the typically found resources of servers are the common ones, no? Like the compute, uh, high speed bandwidth, low latency storage. Okay, these are all disaggregated on the onset. No, these are all disaggregated in the eyes of the applications. They have compute pools, storage pools, and network pools, and they are all shared for those applications as well. So the pools are connected by one or more high speed fabric, no, within the disaggregated infrastructure. So when an administrator needs a server for a specific application, it draws the necessary resources from the resource pools. No, if it needs compute, storage, network, and configures that with the right resources together for that specific application and workload. This results to configurations being optimized, much more optimized for business applications. So to further elaborate on what Dell is doing in terms of infrastructure today, no, server disaggregation is key. So resources are allocated or collected into shared pools. Okay, they are all collected through a very high speed and low latency fabric within the server environment, and allows administrators to leverage a management software that helps them configure these resources altogether. So the results are a much more well utilized uh, infrastructure stack, okay, and makes it ready for allocation and reallocation for business workloads. So the term disaggregation helps IT have a fully composable infrastructure. So coming from the word composable, it helps you compose what a business application needs. So it helps you allocate and reallocate resources based on demand of a particular application. Okay. So again, disaggregation is the compute, storage, and networking. Okay, and basically making it all available for allocation and reallocation. So this is all possible with the software-defined characteristics that we are deploying today. Software-defined storage, software-defined networking, the virtualization of servers. Okay, that makes it possible for us IT to allocate those resources real time and on the fly. Okay. Major benefits of that is the agility that we get and the adaptability to unlock value. So we are able to compose servers, no, with what the applications require, okay, and further unlock those stranded resources or those unused resources within our infrastructure stack, no, within our data center. So what we are introducing to have this disaggregated or a fully composable infrastructure is essentially the MX series, no, the platform itself. So we are introducing MX as what we call the kinetic infrastructure. So coming from the word kinetic, uh, that is always relating to motion, no, allows IT to continuously move towards what they need in terms of the resources required by their business, no, as far as IT is concerned. So we apply that to the dynamic IT infrastructure that helps organizations instantly respond, adapt, and evolve with shifting needs. No, we understand that business applications, high value workloads continuously to change as well and are very variable and dynamic. So allocation and reallocation is also important, and how we are able to provision that to business applications on the fly and on demand is important as well. So kinetic infrastructure is a term that we are introducing that defines true composability. No? The disaggregation of compute, storage, and networking fabric resources and placing them into shared resource pool will be available for on-demand allocation and reallocation. So having that term on demand or that promise of having on demand allows organizations to have that cloud-like velocity and serviceability. No? So it's the goal of every infrastructure. No? So the nirvana of having private clouds and having that cloud-like operating model, no, but have that on premise, no, for the speed, reliability, and security for physical, virtual, and containerized use cases. Okay, so it is a, dynamic IT infrastructure that instantly responds, adapts, and evolves with changing needs of business apps. Okay, so Kinetic brings the benefits of modular design and extends the flexibility of configuration down to individual storage devices, compute devices, and network devices. Okay. So this is basically the infrastructure platform, okay, where workloads will efficiently run on and how applications and workloads get the necessary resources that they need on demand. And those resources that can also be reallocated once another application needs it. MX is basically the foundation for these transformational workloads. So nowadays we are looking at a few technologies that helps us modernize our infrastructure. One of those examples are virtualization. Okay, moving further than virtualization, we are also implementing software-defined storage, no, like vSAN, no, and the likes. That's basically our hyper-converged infrastructure and converged infrastructure. And the mission-critical applications, not the business workloads that we support and we run with the uh, uh, highest priority are the likes of our business apps, ERP, database, the SQLs, the Exchange, no, and so on. Okay. The key attributes that these applications require are most definitely on the underlying technology and the underlying infrastructure. Okay, that will allow them to leverage on that scalable fabric or that disaggregated architecture for an on-demand allocation. MX proposes three key attributes to IT organizations. One of which is the flexible architecture that allows us to dynamically scale and respond to changing needs of business apps. A second is the agile management, which unifies and secure automated infrastructures, no, for increased effectiveness and accelerated operations within IT. Okay, third is the responsive design. Okay, because we understand that our design should be a future forward architecture, no, to deliver infrastructure and deliver investment protection as well. No, as that is one of the many things that we see as challenges for infrastructure solutions. that it has to be a future proof or a future forward architecture for investment protection. So to dissect MX and the components that it have to support applications, no, they are basically those components that we find traditionally in the data center, but deliver that in a disaggregated manner, having compute resources reside on the chassis, storage sleds for flexible and scalable capacities, okay, the MX5016s, and the future-proof network fabrics of Ethernet, okay, and fiber channel switches. Okay. So as we see that not all infrastructures are standardized on the likes of software-defined storage, HCI, we also see converged infrastructures where organizations leverage on the likes of PowerStore, uh, primary storage like storage area networks. So MX is still enabled with fiber channel switches to help us integrate our platforms with those systems running on traditional uh, storage area networks. Okay. And then there's the chassis itself that pulls all of those resources together, pulls those compute, storage, and networking all together and place them in a centralized chassis. Okay. Uh, where our software defined technologies will run on top of, okay, and present those resources all together to our business apps, no, to present those compute, storage, and networking resources all together to the applications and workload itself. Okay. So the flexible architecture, again, is a shared pool of disaggregated resources, mainly the compute, storage, and networking. Okay. What this allows organization is to help assign right resources for the right workload. Okay. And also change dynamically as needed. So with the kinetic infrastructure, those shared pools, okay, can be configured and reconfigured to specific workloads uh, based on their needs and requirement. So by creating on-the-fly hardware capacity, over provisioning and stranded assets are reduced, no, as performance and efficiency are optimized. Okay. Organizations are also able to achieve the promise of pay as you grow, a truly cloud-like operating model in terms of expansion, no, to ensure maximum performance and a scalable multi-chassis environment. Okay. Deployments are also being driven faster, okay, and help IT customize profiles and personalities of a chassis and a server. Okay, so that truly fast tracks times to production, okay, and further enhances IT effectiveness. Okay, and also the primary workload that MX is designed for. Okay, uh, we are looking primarily as MX running software-defined storage. Okay, balanced compute, storage, and network environment. So MX is specifically optimized for workloads like vSAN. So if you're looking into software-defined storage running on VMware, VMware vSAN is one of the key solutions and technologies that we evangelize on MX. So with the advantages of the compute sleds, the storage sleds, and also the networking allows us to build a very low latency fabric and a high performance storage on top of MX7000. So MX, in terms of the network environment, provides IT a 25 gig fabric on the onset. Okay. So it is already enabled with the cost-effective 25 gig fabric right on the server itself. Okay. So this allows for a much more future-proof design to help uh, organizations maximize their investment and future-proof the infrastructure for much more workloads through time. Okay. And the main value of the networking fabric of MX is how it lowers down TCO, no, how it lowers down the total cost of ownership as far as networking operations is concerned. Okay, the main attributes that MX7000 proposed to networking uh, solutions is that networking operations, all switching only happens to the first and second uh, chassis. Okay? Whereby the succeeding chassis can just be configured with expander modules that essentially does not require any switching, doesn't require any operating systems, and hence provides a very low latency. So one of the challenges that we see in traditional blade chassis or traditional chassis-based architectures is that there were a lot of latency because each and every chassis was equipped with their own switching, was equipped with their own operating system. So what we see in MX 7000 is that uh, with the expander module, it only allows the succeeding chassis to pass through towards the first chassis where all of those server sleds and all of those succeeding chassis will meet. Okay. Hence then again providing a low latency. Okay. And this is where we also solve the challenge of having a single point of failure. So most of the concerns that organizations worry of is that on a chassis-based environment that is that it's always a single point of failure. Okay. So with the network architecture being configured redundantly and the entire chassis stack is configured redundantly, again, only those first and second chassis is equipped with the switching engine. Okay. And the rest are all equipped with what we call the expander modules. Okay. This allows organizations, again, to have a very low total cost of ownership. Okay. That gives the third and succeeding chassis only a pass-through module to go towards the first and second uh, built-in top-of-rack switch of MX 7000. Okay. So imagine having to operate only on the first and second fabric or first and second chassis for switching and network operations. Okay. And having no operation reside on the third up to the 10th chassis. So we also consider systems management. So unified and secure automated infrastructure is key in order to keep the lights on this infrastructure stack. Okay. So all resources are being managed through one console. Okay. And helps organization to have control over compute, storage, and network fabrics, including rack and towers. Okay. And have them consolidated in one user interface. Okay. So the simple management that is built in onto the MX 7000 is something that we call the open managed enterprise. Okay. To also scale beyond a single chassis to a multi-chassis deployment and also to a multi-data center or a multi-site implementation. Okay. MX 7000 also introduced the industry's first wireless LCD touchscreen and also a traditional crash card um, onto the server itself. Okay. And be able to streamline and automate server lifecycle management by using mobile applications, call home technologies, okay, and also at the server systems management. So the main software that we introduced here is the Open Managed Enterprise that allows organizations to use the same user interface to manage different types of form factors. A lot of competitors of us is offering different types of systems management, okay, to uh, to manage their infrastructure. One systems management for racks, another systems management for towers, and so on. But we are providing IT departments with a single user interface we call Open Managed Enterprise. Okay, and automate all of those operations in one UI. So protect infrastructure and deliver investment protection as well. So streamline transition to new fabrics and generations and architectures. So as you know, one of the main challenges of infrastructure is that the continuous innovations that we do. and the different generations that we released every, let's say, 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years. So what MX 7000 proposes to IT organizations is the no mid-plane design, which allows them to continuously add new components onto the chassis without having to replace the entire chassis as well. Okay, that allows them uh, for longevity and streamlining generational and architectural transitions. Okay, so this provides uh, asset lifecycle or investment protection by providing multi-generational assurance, no, with support for at least 3 server processor microarchitecture generations. So as apart from the uh, investment protection is also security. So we adhere to the NIST cybersecurity guidelines that is basically protect, detect, and recover. So protection features are essentially a phase that an infrastructure should provide uh, protection against unauthorized access to resources, to data, and as well as tampering of critical components like embedded firmware or even subsystems like drives, network cards, memory, and CPU. Okay? Detection is critical to have a detection capability to have complete visibility into the configuration. Okay? It allows administrators to detect health status, changed events, okay, within the server system itself. So once a security event is detected, no, the ability to send alerts for any and all events is also essential. So all these capabilities need to cover all server components, no, within this platform. Then recovery as well. So recovery is essentially once an IT security incident occurs. Okay. So recovery allows efficiency, okay, and basically a uh, rollback towards a pristine or a certified state of the infrastructure. Okay, this also allows a consistent state, okay, and a consistent response, no, to a variety of events that happen and helps brings our servers back to compliance and to uh, a certified or a baseline configuration. So MX essentially is the first platform meant for the software-defined era. Within Dell, if you are a user of Dell, MX essentially is the next generation platform of the previous M1000E. So like the traditional blade chassis before, out in the market, okay, they were not compliant and they were not architected to run software defined solutions like converged and also hyper converged solutions. Okay. So with MX, it allows organizations to leverage on those technologies. And why do we leverage on those technologies like HCI and software defined data centers? It's because of the cloud like velocity and cloud like operating models. Okay. But of course, we understand that one size doesn't fit all. So uh, beside MX are also the two different platforms that we deliver for different types of implementations and different verticals. For a similar experience of MX, but with a much more compact and a much more lower footprint in the data center is also FX2 that delivers the same architecture as MX, but is on a much more smaller footprint. Okay. So looking at the software-defined era, disaggregation, HCIs, analytics, okay, FX2 is also a platform for smaller, okay, and much more compact implementations. Okay. Then for traditional use cases, edge, no, edge locations, edge computing, no, the traditional way of bringing uh, compute closer to the edge or bringing compute closer to the source. to our edge locations or branches is also something that we look into, most especially of sensors, IoT, and so on. So we also have Vertex for those solutions optimized for small, remote, and branch office deployments. Okay. So all of the solutions of Dell, majority of the solutions of Dell, including some of our data protection solutions, our hyperconverged infrastructures, they all run on PowerEdge servers. So we consider that PowerEdge is the foundation of all Dell EMC portfolio solutions. Yan, primarily including data protection, HCI, and CI. Okay. On the onset of MX7000, the onset, it provides expertise. No, it also has that deployment service embedded to it, no, for mitigating risks and speeding up production and speeding up our uh, deployment timelines. So within Dell, we have this deployment service that allows us to have a certified and worryless implementation, and also our support services that is streamlined across all infrastructure solutions. So may it be the power store that Onin discussed, the MX7000s, okay, or all other platforms within Dell are all streamlined with the same support service. Allows us to become a single point of uh, contact, no, for support concerns. Okay. There are also various technologies embedded in our platforms. So one of which is Support Assist. So Support Assist allows proactive monitoring and automated case creation that resolves issues 72% faster. Simply because Support Assist is enabled or can be enabled onto our platforms to make the infrastructure talk to tech support directly and be able to resolve case faster, okay, without having to rely upon reactive uh, support cases. So aside from the modular platforms like MX 7000, FX2s, and Vertex, there are a lot more server platforms for different verticals. So we are not removing the towers, the rack servers within the portfolio. It will still be there, and it will still be capable to run alongside the modular platforms as well. Okay. And have that streamlined in terms of operations. Okay. So this simple portfolio allows us to efficiently size up your infrastructure and choose the right solution, no, that is fit and optimized to run business applications for specific organizations. No? So yeah, I think this is my last slide. So any questions, feel free to raise them in the chat box. I'll turn over now to the next speaker. For my side, thank you and good afternoon.